Greetings, my name is Simira, and I am recently relocated to Atlanta, Georgia from Sacramento, California. Primary purpose for relocation is to establish the sanctuary, a place of love, light, and laughter. We'll be involved with holistic health. We'll be providing educational opportunities and recreational opportunities, as well as spiritual enrichment. California during the 60s for me was one of adventure. I did attend elementary school there, and I just remember being very attached to the neighborhood. We lived right off of Vermont and 39th. We were very close to the University of Southern California. And I just remember that all of the kids in the neighborhood would get together, and we didn't have video games, and we didn't have a lot of TV, so we were very creative in terms of our play. And we would run our own track races up and down the block to see who was the fastest. We did a lot of roller skating on the sidewalks. We thought that the Rose Garden and the museum, which was a couple of blocks away from us, was our playground, and that we owned it, and we knew it like the back of our hands. So we would walk over there to the exposition park, and we would just play at the park, play hide and seek, and we would just have a ball. We would be in and out of the museum, and we would be running through the exhibits. We just had a great time, but I just remember it being very insular. There was another family that we grew up with that lived around the corner from us, and the children in that family were very close in age to my brothers and sisters and myself, and we would just entertain each other. We would put on little shows, and you know, we didn't call it theater and drama, but basically that's what it was. We would make up our own little dramas and have plays, and we just had a good time. It felt very safe and comfortable. We would just go, you know, if we weren't outside playing, we would go to each other's homes and play. And it was just, for us, very, very wonderful childhood. We didn't think much about what was going on outside of our neighborhood. We knew that our mothers went to work. They both worked over at the college. Now we know that they were doing housekeeping work and working at the dorms and cooking and that type of thing. But you know, we just felt that the world was our oyster. We were just having fun and enjoying it. Well, you know, growing up as a teenager, had some very influential role models in my life. My mother at the time was a single parent because my father was in the military and he was off in some foreign country. So she was raising me and my sister and brothers by herself. And she instilled in me the idea that I did have the inner strength to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. She was very encouraging. I just remember her being very strict about how we dressed because, because I remember at the time that the hemlines were rising very quickly, and a lot of the girls would roll their skirts up at the waistline to make sure that they were short enough to be quote unquote in style. Uh, so it was a time when I'm trying to figure out who I was, and I think that because I did have the opportunity to live several places while growing up, by the time I reached my teens, I was pretty confident about who I was, because I had been exposed to so many different cities and people from different backgrounds. It was easier for me to see where I fit. And I got a special recognition from my peers because I had that experience, whereas they had pretty much been raised in one place all their lives. My friend's mother was a very strong woman, and she encouraged me to come out of my shyness. I was very shy as a young woman, and she taught me how to assert myself. I remember I had this conflict with one of the girls in the neighborhood, and every day after school, there was either almost a fight or there was a fight. But I had friends around me that had much more experience with fighting than I did, and they taught me, what to do and how to handle myself on the streets of Los Angeles. And I never will forget that. Really grateful to them for that. So, I was looking at our mothers and noticing how they carried themselves in that elegant way. None of us had a lot of, neither of our families had a lot of money. We were basically in a working class neighborhood, but they had an elegance about them, and a pride in their appearance. And we learned very quickly how to, make that impression. So it was good. I remember in junior high school sitting in a history class when they announced that President Kennedy had been shot. And that was it was almost like an awakening for us, because it was very traumatic, but it made me think more about the world in general as opposed to my own small, cocoon. So that was sort of a milestone for me, and they encouraged us to pursue our education and to achieve as much as we could in life. That they explained to us that we had opportunities and there was potential, and we just needed to pursue our dreams. I remember as a very young child my father reading to us from a book which in my eyes was very ancient. And this book, it was actually the writings of the explorers Livingston and his partner and it described their travels through the continent of Africa way back at the turn of the century. And that just opened up a whole new world for me. I was just totally fascinated that there was a continent peopled by folks who looked like me, and to gradually become aware of their history and their experience just made me want to read more. Then my dad bought us a set of encyclopedias, which I proceeded to go through one by one. I remember very vividly, it was the Book of Knowledge, and there were at least 20 volumes, and they contained not only factual essays about different things, but also a lot of fiction, which just amazed me. And I knew that with writing, not only could you describe reality, but you could describe fantasy, which was very inspiring for me. And so that was the first, my first exposure to literature. My academic experience, as far as going through school, fortunately for me, I excelled in language arts, is what they called it then. I did okay in math and science, but language arts I found a real affinity for, and so I was usually pretty consistent with high grades on in those subject areas. So it wasn't long before I felt that that was my strength, that my talent was in the area of language and arts and writing. So that is where I put my egg, so to speak. And I was encouraged, not only by my parents, but by my teachers. And so by the time I was ready to attend college, I pretty much knew that I would major in English. And I also took a lot of classes in theater arts. The arts were, for me, the most fascinating part of my education. I didn't become an artist, but I always enjoyed music and drama and the writing. The writing was always there for me. I kept a journal all through junior high school and high school, and I knew that in some way that writing would form the core of my life's work. I feel very fortunate to have had teachers and instructors that gave me a very good foundation to build on, so that by the time I entered college, I had the skills to be successful in that area. So, my thing was always to be in the library. Books became extremely important for me. I would carry one with me all the time, and I get teased a lot, but I didn't care, because books for me opened up other worlds that I would have had no other way of experiencing. So I just pursued it, and whenever I had a free moment, I had a book open. I left Los Angeles, and we traveled to Germany with my dad. And Germany, I finished my last year in high school. And at the time, being African American was, in that time and place, exotic. It was something that was different, and therefore it made us automatically popular among the student body. I was a shy one, but my brother, who was a lot more outgoing, became extremely popular during our high school years. And that was very interesting to me, that whole dynamic of being one of the few black students on that high school campus. So, you know, we enjoyed that. My oldest brother, by that time, had already left home and joined the Marines. And I knew that he was fighting in the Vietnam War. And with my dad being in the military, you know, we would hear a lot about the war. And we had an opportunity to talk to a lot of guys who were in the military, even while I was still in high school. My thought was, well, you know, why are we putting our lives on the line, and and back home we're still fighting for the right to vote. You know, we're still fighting for the right to eat at certain restaurants. You know, it was unfair, and I knew it wasn't right, and I felt that, well, if I wasn't the one to stand up and to voice my feelings about it, then who was going to stand up? So that was the time where, you know, I started having these feelings of, I have to get involved. I have to contribute. And my parents were very supportive of that. It was almost as if they, in watching us come of age during this time, it was almost as if they were seeing themselves at that same age going through the same struggle. So there was an instant recognition, you know, of what we were experiencing, and they were very supportive in helping us find ways to express what we needed to express. So I thank my parents for that. So then, while I was in Germany, I was constantly reading magazines like The Black Scholar and The Black Digest. You know, we would seek out writings by other African Americans, and it helped to raise our consciousness in terms of what was happening on the political scene, what was happening economically, and you know, what some of the avenues might be in order to be an agent for change. So, you know, we started the Black Student Union on campus, and we had our little black berets, and you know, it was all about black power, and I was very anxious. I remember being very anxious to get back to the States, you know, so that I could participate in this Black Power movement. And we were very excited about it. Um, my, I went from the crescent curl to the full-blown afro. I was like, yeah, let's do this. This has got to happen. And, we were at the perfect age to have the energy and to do, exactly that. So that's sort of where, all of the activism and the urge to be involved came in. I remember coming back to Los Angeles and asking the same friends that I grew up with in that neighborhood off of Vermont in 39th. We were actually living on Wisconsin Avenue. And so I was asking my old neighborhood friends, were like, okay, take me to the Panther headquarters right now. I hadn't even unpacked my suitcase. And I just wanted to get down there, and I was like down for the struggle, and we got to do this. And they told me, after having a good laugh, you're not going to find any panthers, Simira. They're underground. And don't you be running around talking that stuff, because you're going to end up getting arrested. And they were sort of afraid for me, because I was so bound and determined that I was going to find a group, and the more radical the group, the better, as far as I was concerned. So after about 6 months and not being able to hook up with the Panthers, I said, well, I guess I better finish school. So I ended up out at UC Riverside to finish up my college. I had done 2 years in Germany, so this was a place where I felt I could finish the next 2 years. And there were some things going on in Riverside at the time. I mean, there were some political trials going on because of police brutality, and there were activists in Riverside who were, in essence, political prisoners. So, we got involved in trying to free Gary Lawton and putting our energy into the black student unions at RCC and UCR. Of course, there was, at that time, they had established Black Studies on campus, which, was just totally a thrill for us, that we could actually go into a classroom and sit down and read nothing but African American authors. And then I was like very inspired. It's like, okay, there's all these black poets and there's all these black writers, and they're writing about things that are relevant right now, and they're sharing all these experiences, and I knew I had some things I wanted to share, and so I went into I started writing poetry, and I mean, it was just flowing. Influence, the last poets. I remember, oh gosh, there were so many. I mean, Sonia Sanchez. Oh yeah, so there were so many black writers started coming up, and the community was becoming more and more aware that these writers existed. There were all these opportunities, for writers to be published, and I was just absolutely thrilled because, for most of my life, I had been reading, but most of what I had been reading was by European authors, or American authors, And to all of a sudden have this whole nother world open up was absolutely amazing and so inspiring. And I just, I give big props to those authors who inspired those of us who were growing up in the 60s. I mean, Soul on Ice, Eldridge Cleaver, what else were we reading? We were reading Wretched of the Earth, Frantz Fanon. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So that inspired me to put forth a serious effort, and I did manage to to write quite a bit during that period, primarily poetry. But it also encouraged me to complete my studies. So I completed the undergraduate degree in literature and left school, and we formed a co-op. It was, because we knew that it wasn't just about the cultural part of who we were, but that we also needed to establish an economic foundation in order to be the community, to be the race that we wanted to be the nation, within the nation that we wanted to be. So we formed a printing co-op that was attached to a nonprofit foundation. And basically what we were attempting to do was to bring in young people, teach them some skills that they could use to earn a wage, a living wage, and at the same time share a philosophy with them. And that was my first experience in trying to, in essence, create our own reality. We didn't want to go downtown and work for the shopkeepers. We didn't want to turn over our lives to someone else. We wanted more control in terms of how we lived, how we earned our money, and what we spent our money on. And that print shop was successful. It operated for a good 7 years. It was right on the corner of Adams Boulevard and 13th Avenue. And it's called Pulse Press. We did a lot of printing for black theater companies. We did a lot of printing for black businesses, art galleries. We printed books of poetry by some of the poets that were very prolific during that period. And we did a lot of business cards, a lot of flyers. I learned all of the elements of graphic arts and print prep. And it was just a very exciting time for us. And the only reason I left is because I was expecting. And so after my daughter was born, I moved on and ended up working for the state of California, because all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, this is not enough money. I need to do something else. So I went and worked for the state of California, and that turned into a 30-year career. But it was the career with the state of California allowed me to work with people who were unemployed. So I got some satisfaction out of that. And and then I eventually became a trainer, and I developed platform skills and writing skills even more. And now that that career is finished, I want to take everything that I've learned and put it into the establishment of the sanctuary, where we can once again, focus completely on helping people to understand that they have everything they need within themselves to create the type of life that they want to live. And that's what we're about. And that's what we're going to do. And I'm just extremely excited about that. Writing for me has always been important. As a child, I developed a love of reading, and as I grew older and began to realize the power of the written word, I began to write poetry and essays, and decided that communicating through the written word was very liberating and an awesome experience, not only for the writer but the reader. So I am still on the writing journey, and I'm looking forward to authoring novels and literature for children. What I would like to say to other people, wherever they might be, who are focused on their creativity, who are focusing on the arts in whatever form they might take, I would like to emphasize to them that they are not alone, that they're connected, what I call a diamond net of like-minded individuals. And even if they never physically come into contact with those like-minded souls, the energy that they are projecting is felt by all of those individuals. So I want to stress that, because I think that's important. I think sometimes artists feel that they are isolated and somehow working, so hard, but working alone. And I just want to emphasize to them that just the fact that they're doing what they're doing automatically connects them to these other like-minded souls, and that energy compounds. It just grows exponentially, and that's what they should be aware of. So that they never feel that what they're doing is futile, or that it's not having enough impact, because it's having so much impact. It's having so much of an influence. It's touching so many people. So just don't stop. Just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. However you can do it, for as long as you can do it.